Medgar Evans played a significant role in the NAACP throughout his short life. He was the first field secretary for the NAACP. He fought in World War II prior to that, and he was a distinguished veteran. He thought coming back from war, he might help him with discrimination, but he did not feel that way. There were attempts on his life before he was assassinated finally in his car in 1963. Byron de la Beckwith killed him, who was a member of the Ku Klux Klan. Byron was initially arrested for his murder, but he remained free for 3 decades until there was a retrial when the initial jury had came forth with the encounter. Beckwith was arrested in the 70s for life in prison for the murder. His legacy did not die. His wife and brother became heavily involved in civil rights. He had an impact on a lot of lives we may not know, but of one thing he has done is he wanted school integration. We also will always remember him as a true man that wanted equality for all.
James Farmer has impacted us so much. He helped shape the civil rights movement through his nonviolent activism. In 1998, he was awarded with the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian honor. James Farmer has pushed the nonviolent protest against segregation alongside Martin Luther King Jr. James Farmer was arrested in Jackson for disturbing the peace and spent 40 days in the Mississippi jail. He has also accomplished organizing the nation's first civil rights. In 1942, he had founded the Congress of Racial Equality, has also known as CORE. James made it to where we did not have to explain nonviolence to people.
Nelson Mandela served as the first president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was Africa's first black head of state and the first elected in a fully representative democratic election. This is more than 20 years before Barack Obama was. Former South African president, civil rights advocate Nelson Mandela dedicated his life to fighting for equality and ultimately helped topple South Africa's racist system of apartheid. One of Nelson Mandela's influences was the creation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to investigate human rights violations and provide a framework to get rid of these atrocities. His accomplishments are now celebrated each day on July 18th, Nelson Mandela International Day. He won the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1993.
Harriet Tubman was an American abolitionist and political activist. Born into slavery, Tubman escaped and eventually made some 13 missions to free approximately 70 enslaved people along the Underground Railroad. Tubman's code name was Moses, and she was literate her entire life. She considered work to be like Moses' work and took it serious.
John C. Lewis was in a group called the Big Six. That group was the group of leaders who organized the very famous 1963 March in Washington. This group helped shape the civil rights movement, and they did that by encouraging marches, freedom rides, and various legislation. March 7th, 1965 was called Bloody Sunday when John C. Lewis marched with 600 and more people across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. This march made an impact because it helped lead to the Voting Rights Act and opened many people's eyes to what was happening. State troopers and county posse men attacked the unarmed marchers with billy clubs and tear gas after they passed over the county, a line of state and county officers poised to attack. He made it so that African American people had rights and so they could be elected president. He also reached a younger generation and helped to create a series of graphic novels.
Jackie Robinson was born on January 31st, 1919, in Cairo, Georgia. He became the first African American baseball player in the MLB. Jackie showed that it does not matter what color your skin is, you can still play sports. Robinson broke the baseball color line when he started at first base for the Brooklyn Dodgers on April 15, 1947. 42 was Robinson's number with the Brooklyn Dodgers, would be permanently retired throughout Major League Baseball.
Ella Baker was a major force in shaping the civil rights movements in America. Ella Baker was a premier behind-the-scenes organizer and co-founder of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was headed by Martin Luther King Jr. She was inspired by the historic bus boycott, which is an African-American protest so they can sit anywhere, and was located in Montgomery, Alabama. Baker co-founded the organization in friendship to raise money for the civil rights movement in the South. Baker continued to be a respected and influential leader in the fight for human and civil rights until her death on her 83rd birthday.
Frederick Douglass was an African-American social reformer, abolitionist, or writer, and statesman after escaping from slavery in Maryland. He became a national leader of the abolitionist movement in Massachusetts and New York, which was to help get people out of slavery, because he was in it and he did not like it, becoming famous for oratory and incisive anti-slavery writings. Frederick Douglass would travel around and do speeches so he could help and end slavery, because he had to experience that, and he did not like it at all. And eventually it worked, which a lot of people helped.
Ruby Bridges was the first African American to go to an all-white school in the South. She was 6 years old when she went to William Franz Elementary School. Currently Ruby is only 67 years old, which might be as old as some of our grandparents. This has impacted my life and many others because it was the first time a school in the South was desegregated. Ruby and her mother were escorted by 4 federal marshals to the school every day that year. She walked past crowds screaming vicious slurs at her even though she was 6 years old. It opened up schools in the South to black students and also helped overturn Plessy versus Ferguson.
During the Tulsa Race Massacre, which happened over 18 hours from May 31 to June 1, 1921, a white mob attacked residents' homes and businesses in the predominantly black Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa, Oklahoma. The event remains one of the worst incidents of racial violence in U.S. history, and, for a period, remained one of the least known. News reports were largely squelched despite the fact that hundreds of people were killed and thousands left homeless. I feel that people should know about the Tulsa Race Massacre because the massacre was about racism and black people were treated very wrong because the color of their skin. Black people had their own street that you'd rarely any catch white people, but the white mob attacked the black people's homes. They killed many of people and left some homeless, and what's so messed up is that the Greenwood neighborhood is the only thing that black people had to themselves, and the white mobs, in my opinion, were just jealous that the black people had Greenwood to themselves, when I don't get how they would be mad/jealous when the white people had way more than the black people had. So that doesn't make sense to me when they had everything, and they basically took the only thing that black people had to share together. It happened through started May June 31, 1921.